Imagine yourself in a place with no way out. Behind you, a furious army comes charging, with horses and soldiers ready to destroy. In front of you, a vast, deep sea, impossible to cross. What would you do? That was the situation of the people of Israel. They were trapped, hopeless, and it seemed like the end had come. But in that moment of greatest despair, God showed a power no one could imagine. This story is not only about the past, it's about trusting God, even when everything looks impossible. Many years before that day, a man named Moses was chosen by God to free the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. As a baby, Moses was saved miraculously from the waters of the Nile River. As an adult, he encountered the true God at the burning bush and received a mission to face Pharaoh and lead the people out of slavery. Moses was not perfect, but he obeyed. Standing before the most powerful king of the time, he did not back down. God sent plagues, showed signs, and finally Pharaoh allowed the people to leave. But their journey would not be easy. There were still great challenges ahead. Pharaoh could not bear the idea of losing his slaves. His anger grew, and he gathered a huge army, war chariots, horses, heavily armed soldiers. It was a terrifying display of power and hatred. Pharaoh's hardened heart refused to accept defeat. He believed he could overpower Israel and drag them back into slavery. So he launched his pursuit. The sound of galloping horses and the glimmer of weapons filled the horizon, and the Israelites heard the threatening noise of the enemy drawing closer. Fear gripped them, because they knew they faced an army without mercy. Suddenly, the people found themselves trapped between two impossible choices. Behind them, destruction. In front of them, a sea no one could cross. Children cried, families panicked, many complained. Some asked, "Why did Moses bring us here? Wouldn't it have been better to stay in Egypt?" Fear turned into murmuring. But in the middle of all that panic, there was a man of faith. Moses was not overcome by fear. He lifted his voice and said, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." The contrast was striking. On one side, a crowd full of doubt. On the other, a man who trusted God completely. Then the impossible happened. Moses stretched out his staff over the sea, and a strong wind began to blow. The waters, which had seemed like an unbreakable barrier, started to move. Slowly, but with unstoppable force, the sea divided in two. Walls of water rose on the right and on the left, and in the middle appeared a dry path. Imagine the scene: the roaring sea, waves standing still like giant wolves, and the people staring in awe at the road God had just opened. It was as if the Creator himself was showing that nothing is impossible for him. The people began to cross. Children held their parents' hands. The elderly walked with hope. Everyone stepped forward with wide eyes at this miracle. The ground, which should have been muddy, was completely dry. With each step they realized God was with them. Fear turned into joy. That crossing was not just an escape. It was proof that God's power was greater than any enemy. Families encouraged one another, and each person knew they were living the most incredible moment of their lives. But the Egyptian army did not give up. They charged onto the same path, relying on their own strength. Horses and chariots rushed through the middle of the sea, believing they could catch the Israelites. But the God who opened the way also had the power to close it. When the Israelites were safely on the other side, Moses stretched out his staff once again, and suddenly, the waters returned to their place. The sea swallowed horses, chariots, and soldiers. The most feared army of that time was destroyed in a single moment, not by human force, but by the power of God. The people, who had been terrified before, were now filled with joy and reverence. They had seen with their own eyes that God is faithful, powerful, and just. The obedience of Moses brought deliverance. The disobedience of Pharaoh brought destruction. That is the great lesson. Obeying God is always the best path. When we trust Him, no matter how great the problem, He makes a way where there is no way. But when we disobey, we run toward defeat. And this story is not just about Moses and the sea, it's about our lives too. Sometimes we face problems that feel like unending seas, fears, difficulties, sadness, but God is still the same. He opens paths, brings unexpected solutions, and shows that nothing is impossible when we obey Him. For children, the lesson is simple and powerful. Obeying God means trusting Him, following His teachings, and always choosing what is right. And how can we learn to obey God every day? By reading the Bible and praying. The Bible teaches us what is right, and prayer brings us closer to God. This is how our faith grows, and we learn to trust Him even when everything looks impossible. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Bible for Little Kids, give this video a like, and share it with your friends. Together we will learn more about God's power and love. And remember, with God by our side, no sea will ever be too big.